نفاد تغنبيا نفاد.
So what is your take? You did mention, I mean, and I actually do want to understand that you were part of the process, and you've had at least some sort of engagement in terms of the constitutional making and building process in the Gambia. What is your take as to the possibilities of having a constitution, a new one, for that matter, in the Gambia?
Thank you, Mr. Ba, and thank you to Mr. Jallo also for that history lesson that we needed to also put in context. But I will also come back from a political lens and observing the history of the Gambia and nations similar to it, is politicians tend to make political decisions. And usually political decisions are informed by the term that they're serving. So most of what was decided as per the term, electoral term that they were serving, and it's always at the expense of the general Gambian. So what we've seen is most of these decisions that the CRC was trying to also avoid for the presidency to dwell into, was to try to stifle that political decision making that politicians tend to do. So when it comes to the 2020 draft constitution, that's what we've seen. We've seen a very comprehensive consultative process of constitutional building, but the politicians came in and exerted their own interpretation, whether on the other side of the aisle, that is those in opposition, they will also try to do whatever they could to stifle the powers or the capabilities of those in power. Those in power will also look at it from the lens of trying to curb the powers that might allow them to, quote unquote, rule effectively. But the question we need to ask is, did we really need a new constitution? Because most of the decisions that were made post 1996 was very political in nature, was very short-sighted in nature, was very retributive in nature. So it was all about undoing whatever was Yahya Jammeh, whatever bears the footprint of Yahya Jammeh, including the constitution, including the Dalasi, including whatever else, even these statues that we saw. And it sounded a bit petty to me, because the average Gambian was suffering to have access to clean potable water to drink, adequate health care, proper education. So if we had focused on serving the Gambians, addressing those basic needs, and making sure that justice doesn't just stop at, it's not only focused on the courts and trying to bring people to task who've committed crimes, whether economic or crimes on people, but justice as a human right, where people will get the basics to make their lives a dignified one. So what my opinion is we could have reviewed what we had in the 1997 Constitution. Those laws that was claimed that Yahya Jammeh had inserted wrongfully could have been reviewed and amended using the National Assembly. We had the new dispensation had a majority in the National Assembly at some point, and they could have easily made all those amendments with the goodwill of the people, because they had the people behind them. But we were also pushed towards unending spending in all these commissions that bore not much benefit, as was sold to us. So for me, really, It's not too late. We can still go back to that process, look at what is wrong with the 1997 Constitution. We already have an idea of where the people want or what type of constitution the people want. We could use these to make those necessary amendments from the 1997. So it will be inclusive from the perspective of we've heard from the Gambians, and now we have a National Assembly that is somewhat almost balanced, although it's tipped in the favor of the ruling party. But at least that way we could hear them out and we could use this newfound information from the consultative process as a benchmark to make those amendments.
Yeah, no, it's actually interesting to hear that, because that may well be the way forward, bearing in mind the deadlock that we have presently. Piecemeal changes to the 1997 Constitution. So we can go and lift the provisions in the 2020 draft that are not controversial, and then try and see how best we can introduce them into the 1997 Constitution by way of constitutional amendments. Of course, that is an option, and as a last resort, that may well be the way forward. But I have always advocated for a new constitution, if possible, if for nothing but for symbolic purposes, to signal a departure from our very checkered recent past, certainly from the perspective of fundamental human rights and freedoms, to perhaps a new, better and fresh beginning. So that is important. But in the event that is not attainable, having a new constitution is not attainable. I think I've suggested this before as well, and now it's refreshing to hear it from Hussein as well, a politician, a frontline politician, that we could resort to piecemeal changes in the 1997 Constitution, make necessary amendments, introduce provisions from the 2020 draft that are acceptable or that were not controversial or that were not contentious as far as the political voting process in Parliament was concerned, and have them in. So it's better to have that than to have nothing at all. So I think sometimes when you don't get what you want, you try and strike a compromise. That's what reasonable people do, and the constitutional building process should be no exception. I believe this is it's an option that should not be off the table. And as a last resort, I believe it is one that could ultimately be practical, be feasible, and be reasonable in the circumstances, especially if the deadlock continues.
Yes. We try not to do emotional politics, and we try to be as pragmatic as possible. We may have a checkered past in the former regime's way of handling matters arising with political opponents or people expressing dissent, or even people that they just don't like. But when it comes to a nation state, governance is continuous. So we need to ensure that continuity, regardless of who is in power and who succeeds them. Because if you do a diagnosis of why most of these countries that are termed third world countries, these breakages in successive regimes and what they have brought forward has been the reason why development has been problematic for them. If you see most stable countries, regardless of who comes in power, there's continuity when it comes to governance, and we need to ensure that we need to be very sane in our approach. We should not be vengeful, we should not be retributive in our approach, but we need to look at the greater interest of the Gambians that we serve. So if you are a politician, you are seeking legitimacy through the votes of the Gambians. And the Gambians, mostly, they're not concerned with your petty squabbles with your fellow politicians. All they want is to live a life of dignity. So basically, just make sure you do what is right. But all these political calculations are what is really holding us back. Hundreds of millions. And even if we were to now embark upon another form of constitutional process, how much more money is going to be spent? Who's going to be the biggest benefactors of this money? Probably not even Gambians, but consultants from abroad. or those people who are already well off, they don't even have basics of living a dignified life. Life is not their problem. And we say we are doing it in the name of the average Gambian who is struggling to have 3 square meals. So we need to be very pragmatic. We need to be very practical. We need to put aside this election cycle type of politics and look at the long term. We don't really need, for me, I'm talking about my position. We don't need a third republic. For what? What do you need a third republic for? Just because it's going to be a third republic and it's in your term that you attained it? No. That's not the overall call of the average Gambian. Go and do a survey. Ask the average Gambian whether they'll ask you what is a third republic. All they need is a tool, a constitution that serves their needs. And most of these issues that have been highlighted in this, let's say, 2024 constitution that are seen controversial. Retroactivity of the term limit. Council Jallo just mentioned it. And what? Secularism, Sharia courts, 50+1 in elections, diaspora voting, declaration of assets, integrity, and the approval of nominations at the level of National Assembly. These things can be discussed. They can be discussed by sane, logical people who are there to serve the interests of their electorate. And we can come to terms with each and every one of these things if we present our arguments in a logical, coherent manner, rather than always doing it from a political calculating lens. Thank you.
I'm following Hussein's submissions. Quite interesting. I'm following it's quite interesting and quite enlightening, especially coming from a politician. Quite refreshing as well, because politicians sometimes always have a way perhaps of saying a lot without saying anything, but at least he is very direct and frank and open with his views and concerns, and this is quite important, and that is exactly what we are trying to achieve here. As far as the political space is concerned, what is NAFAA's position? He is the interim leader of NAFAA, so he can speak on behalf of NAFAA. What is NAFAA's official position vis-a-vis the constitutional building process, vis-a-vis the way forward? That is very important.
Yeah. Mr.
Thank
Adam, you may want to answer that question.
Yes. Thank you, Council Jallo. Thank you, Mr. Ba. We are here. We are currently experiencing a tug of war, where you have very strong forces. One force, on one hand, says my toy is nicer than yours. My toy is more effective than yours. The other one says my toy is more effective than yours. So 2024, 2020, which one? Push and pull. Who becomes the victim? The Gambian. But we have one that has been at the center stage of everything going on in the Gambia, in that it is the constitution that we are still using, that is the 1997 constitution. Our view is we need to go piecemeal with it. We already have consulted Gambians. We have an idea of what type of constitution Gambians want. Let's use that as a basis, as a benchmark, to start making those necessary amendments. And if it is introduced and it warrants a debate, a discussion, or even putting it out there for people to voice their opinion, because with time also certain situations, certain realities evolve. So from 2020 to date, certain realities amongst Gambians might have evolved. Let us factor it in the discussion, but let's go back to the 1997 constitution. Gambia is not in need of a third republic, not now. We have more pressing priorities. Let's get a constitution that is fit for purpose, that aligns with the realities of Gambians today, and let's build a nation that is competitive globally.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hussein. Just a follow-up. So I mean, we have seen that during the debate for the 2020 draft to be passed, a lot of issues that were raised concerned the level of engagement by the government, vis-a-vis the interactions with CSOs, with communities, and with ordinary Gambians in terms of consultations for the 2020 draft, for the 2024 draft. And now you're suggesting that we can actually go back and really amend the 1997 constitution. But then this is purely a legislative process. So what will be the role of political parties in terms of consultation at the grassroots level, when an idea as the one you're proposing is going to be going back, and what would be the position of NAFAA in that respect too?
Yes, for us, we can, because we don't have representation yet at the level of the parliament. So what we can do is we can give our position regarding every matter that needs to be discussed. We can also propose issues that we feel needs to be amended in the 1997 constitution. But also politicians and political parties can also use their influence with their fellow politicians in parliament to also put forward certain amendments that are most pressing, because it can go by, how do you call it again, at levels of importance or level of urgency. So we need to identify the most pressing ones and put them forward. And at the end of the day, the general Gambian will need to vote for those, when it goes to a referendum. I think that's when you need the general Gambian. But we have spent over 100 million in consulting Gambians already. We don't need to spend that much again in consulting again something that has already been consulted. So we need to just get to work, start making those amendments, and within a short period of time, we can get at least a constitution that is reasonable, And it's a process, It's a process that can you can work on it over time, but from now until even next year, we can get a lot done. And it's going to be a process that will continue. We don't need heads of state coming into the Gambia. We don't need to be sending our politicians out there. We have other basic. You have schools that don't have proper toilets. You have schools that don't have even proper lighting for teachers who stay late to mark the children's papers, so that they can go home safe. We have very pressing issues as a nation, rather than just trying to spend endlessly in processes that will bear no fruit, because I couldn't see no light at the end of the tunnel if we persist in this path that we're taking. It's 2020 is the best, 2024 is the best. You'll have it my way or I'll vote it out. No, you'll have it my way or I'll vote it out. I don't see any success in this process, except if we take this further route. I think this is very important. Gambians need to be talked to. We are a nation that we just need information so that we can be guided. People are very innocent, and they need this type of guidance. They need this type of information.
Fansoto banko dinghi kajaya julo lube kuntu kakili ya londi kafi